Well, welcome to Digital Ag Global. I'm brought to you by Qaltivate. I'm Clyde Graham, an agribusiness consultant from Keystown Solutions. I've spent the past 2 days working with the fertilizer industry to navigate environmental, safety, trade, tax, transportation, and economic issues. Clearly, I'm far from an expert on digital agriculture and technology, but I'm here to ask some questions and keep the discussion moving. We've listened to audience feedback in our first two sessions, and so today's episode will focus on digital solutions for livestock production and meat processing. As always, Yurii Kovalchuk, President and CEO of Qaltivate, will be on hand to add his perspective to the discussion. But let's start with some introduction of our guests. I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Shari of CATTLEytics. Shari, could you just give a brief introduction of yourself and snapshot of your company?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Clyde. So I come from a veterinary background, so I'm a veterinarian, but I'm also an engineer. And I take that background into everything I do. And one of that is tied to the way that we help dairy farmers. So dairy farming is both a complex sense of agriculture, but it's also something that has a lot of opportunity. And so we use digital solutions to help dairy farmers optimize their operations, connect with their staff, and basically find these big data insights that'll help them be more profitable.
All right, well, thanks a lot. So let's turn it over to Sebastian Victorica at UBI Meat.
Thank you, Clyde. Thank you, Yurii, for having me. Yeah, my name is Sebastian Victorica. I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders of UBI Meat. Started my professional journey in Uruguay in the early 2000s, where I gained extensive experience working for a Brazilian broker in the meat industry before moving to Canada in the early 2007. And there I started working for a Dutch group, helping them open the offices in Canada, Russia, Uruguay, and Brazil. So yeah, my background is in international business, which has given me a unique perspective on the challenges and opportunity about this worldwide industry of the meat. And I started UBI Meat regarding an unsatisfied need, a service I wish I could have when I was trading meat worldwide. And it was to having meat experts in quality control. And this is how we started before the pandemic. Until the pandemic there, we switched, we pivoted or grew our company after we applied for an accelerator program in the US called Farm to Fork, sponsored by Cargill and Ecolab. This Techstars accelerator helped us to develop this meat grading and monitoring platform that with artificial intelligence is helping to the meat processors remove all the subjectivity and grade the meat properly and more efficiently.
All right. Okay. And just remind, let the audience in where you're coming from today geographically, since it is Digital Ag Global, Sebastian.
I am originally from Uruguay, and our company is headquartered in Montreal, Quebec.
In Montreal, okay. And Shari, you're out west in Canada, I understand?
I'm in Ontario right now. So yeah, also in Canada, on the outskirts of Hamilton.
All right, so let's go to Lviv in Ukraine. Yurii, maybe you just remind the audience and for new people to the audience about your background and Qaltivate.
Sure. Thank you, Clyde. Guys, my name is Yurii Kovalchuk. I am CEO of Qaltivate. We are an AgTech software development company. My background is in software development and IT. I come from a smallholder farmer family. I've been around it for years, and we decided to put our engineering expertise into the field of agriculture. And one of the missions of our company is to bring additional awareness for AgTech innovations, and that's how Digital Ag Global was born. Today, guys, as Clyde mentioned, we're going to talk a bit about animal tech. We'll talk about opportunities and challenges that the industry is facing right now. We will discuss the impact of AI technologies on animal tech, and also adoption curve and what to expect in the future in the industry.
All right, well, let's get down to it. For this episode, we're going to be exploring emerging digital solutions for raising livestock and getting animal-based products to grocery stores and other consumer markets. I'd like to start by raising I think a fundamental question. What are the opportunities and the challenges for deploying information technology when you're dealing with livestock production and processing? But let's start at the farm. Dr. Shari, maybe you could tell us your perspectives on that pros and cons, or the challenges and rewards of digital agriculture in the livestock sector.
Yeah. So speaking about cattle specifically, if we talk about the beef cattle industry, for instance, and we do work in that industry as well, you need to potentially have an edge computing solution. And what I mean by that is that if you have some sort of difficult geographies, often some of these places, feedlots, are in places where you can't necessarily get a great cell signal, then potentially internet is also an issue. So you need to have a solution that does have that capability in a lot of these places. You also have to understand the mechanics of it. So on a feedlot side, if you have animals waiting in a cattle chute, you can run into welfare issues if potentially you don't have a solution that works rapidly. There's weather challenges. So solutions that would work in other areas. In cattle processing, you would have potentially those mushroom buttons so that you can hit those buttons with mittens on when it's minus 30. You know, there's some complications on that front. When we're talking about the dairy industry, they tend to have better connectivity, but that still is an issue. And also those the data has to be right, and the data solutions have to be able to be held potentially by one hand while a farmer is, who knows what, dehorning a calf or something like that. And so that robustness of the solution, the simplicity of the solution, isn't necessarily tied to specifically the farmer, but the complex environments that they're operating in. And so that tends to be very specific to agriculture in some cases, the weather constraints, the animal factor, the welfare factor. And they all come together so that when you're getting a great solution, they have to hit it out of the park on all of those fronts. And if they don't, it could be a great technology, but it's just not going to work. So that's really important when you're talking about creating this adoption, is how do you actually know what's happening on the ground, meet that farmer, that producer, that that feedlot worker where they're at, and find a solution that works with them in minus 40 with fairly complex environmental changes.
All right. Well, that's important to know. Sebastian, I think obviously consumers are increasingly demanding to know more about the products they're buying in the supermarket, and to understand the quality of those products. What are the challenges and the opportunities in meeting those demands, and how can digital agriculture help?
Challenges are a lot, because I'm just landed from Paris, from the Cial Food Show, which is one of the biggest food shows in the world, together with Anuga and Con. And what I have seen, it surprised me that every year is growing and growing all this consumer demand, and what they are demanding about transparency, about what they are consuming, and especially the new generations said and all that. And the meat industry, they has been traditionally relying on pen and paper, no? So manual and visual inspections to grade the meat by human graders, this can be subjective and inconsistent. And this is what not the consumers are demanding nowadays. So with the introduction of all these AI grading technologies, we can now provide a higher level of accuracy and consistency to help them at every level, no? Especially hotels, restaurants, and catering, delivering a consistent product. And this is where I see the trend going about all this implementation from farm, as companies like Shari, to our case that we are delivering and measuring and grading the final product to the consumer, the retailer in the supermarket. So I think that there is a huge opportunity there to explore that market and delivering to the customers, the consumers, all this transparency through all these grading technologies. No?
So Yurii, all these solutions, fundamental to them is software. How well placed is the agriculture industry to meet the demands for new and more innovative software in these areas?
Well, that's a great question, Clyde. In reality, it's one big supply chain. What Dr. Shari was talking about is how we can improve production, how we can improve animal welfare, and then environmental impact of farming operations, specifically livestock. But then when we go further down the line, how we can cater to the needs of the end clients and the traceability issue. So there are a lot of solutions out there that helps with a specific need or a specific challenge within the supply chain. But in complex industries like livestock, it's hard to create one size fits all solution. That's why I would say it is important for innovators or digital innovators in livestock world right now to focus on a very specific problem and develop solutions that can actually help or cater to those needs. If you talk about traceability, for example, and getting to know where your food comes from, there is a solution from IBM called IBM Food Trust. That's basically a blockchain-based solution that helps you to trace your food from farm to fork. But when we're talking about farm level, managing the operations, managing your herd, etc., there are a lot of different solutions, from pure farm management software to IoT sensing solutions to computer vision solutions that helps to improve, for example, animal welfare and making sure we are meeting environmental standards. So it is a versatile environment, and both digitally, and we need to find a very specific problems to tackle with very specific digital tools.
All right. So I'm just going to take a second to encourage the audience as you're following along. Please send us any questions or comments that you have into the chat, and we'll try and respond to those during the session. We do want this to be as interactive as possible. I think when people are assessing these kinds of solutions that are innovative, I think it always does, though, come down fundamentally to the bottom line. Maybe you could outline a little bit about how the economics of farms or meat processing can be improved through the use of digital solutions. Why don't you start, Sebastian?
I will let Shari to start. Ladies first.
Okay. All right, Shari, away you go.
So as far as the economics, yeah, I mean, these things have to make sense. But Sebastian so aptly pointed out, I think that a lot of these things are win-wins. You know, when you have better quality meat, you have a better product for the consumer. You potentially have better animal welfare. Like it ties into every piece of that. And so what we're doing is we're looking for the win-wins. So when we're talking about a dairy farm in Canada, we have a specific system, which would be the quota system. And then within that system, dairy farmers can only sell so much milk. Really, it's butter fat. But so when we're looking for the win-wins there, it's often tied to, you know, how to optimize that system to financially benefit. But actually, when we look a little closer to it, a lot of dairy farmers would actually value their lifestyle and the benefits to just their experience as a dairy farmer, as opposed to necessarily just the bottom line. So that at times is actually valued even more so above economics. But the economics come in when we're able to, as an industry, predict how much milk we're producing, tie into some of those bigger organizations that are looking for sustainability metrics or any of those high-level farming metrics. So then the financial benefit also comes at that high level too. So it is a value chain. We're looking to add value to everybody across the chain, but sometimes the buy-in might actually tie more directly into what makes somebody's everyday life that much better.
Yeah, dairy farming is a very intensive form of agriculture, and cows need milking 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So anything you can do to improve lifestyle is important. Sebastian, do you have any thoughts on economics in the meat processing area?
Yeah, at a manufacturing level, no, the benefits, what we are seeing is like to have a streamlined production process, no, where you remove all the manual tasks. This adds a long-term return on investment because of the increased efficiency. This is what we are providing, no, to reduce with the optimizations to reduce the meat waste, which I don't want to come up with numbers at 1/3 of what is produced is getting lost or wasted, but yeah, it happens 20% after prior to arriving to a supermarket. And producing in a more efficient and optimization way, at the end of the day, is helping not only the environment with that you produce in a more sustainable way, but the end consumer that is going to be paying less, believe it or not, because all of those wastes or inefficiencies along the meat supply chain, somebody's paying at the end of the day for that. This is where I see a huge economic impact on the final consumer.
And Clyde, can I just add to that as well? I think one of the elements getting into like what the financials mean, because I think that's probably somebody externally looking into this. They're like, well, you know, how do we quantify how much money is saved? For some of the issues we're looking at, a farmer might base their decision on hunches. Should I buy in more feed, or should I use this feed that's not quite ready yet? You know, if you're talking about things like corn silage, there was a dairy farmer we worked with that was using corn silage before it was ready because they didn't want to buy in feed. They had a hunch that that wasn't the right thing to do, right? But when we were able to quantify that hunch and say, you know what, not only did that affect the milk production of your dairy cows, but it did so for many, many months, because all of those animals that just started their lactation, their whole lactation was then capped and diminished throughout that lactation. When we're able to say that decision costs you 30 grand, then they say, oh, well, maybe a $5,000 fix sounds a lot better, you know, and then I'll take a $25,000 vacation. Maybe not the vacation piece, but I think those are the things when we're talking about financials. There's those minor decisions. I'm going to shift this direction by 2% or that direction by 2%. And then the trajectory of that can mean some really big dollars.
Yeah, so what you're talking about is better informed decision making, you know, at the farm level.
Absolutely.
Maybe Yurii, do you have some thoughts in terms of dollars and cents in the area of in this area?
I mean, not a lot, but my personal belief is that the ROI, return on investment, should be clear for a farmer from a day one. And that's where those insights and knowledgeable decision make a lot of sense. But also, apart from economics themselves, we need to take into account learning curve for farmers themselves. If we are implementing new technology on a farm, we should understand how long would it take to educate your staff how to operate it. If you're talking about like robotics, like automated milking machines, for example, or we are talking about some farm management software, and we should explain our employees what this dashboard means and how to make a useful insight out of it. So it's not directly a dollar question, but a kind of learning curve question as well.
Yeah, I think Sebastian, you mentioned pen and paper, and obviously we're moving to a digital world, but you know, how important is the record keeping that becomes sort of automated in processes as we move from analog to digital in the livestock meat industry?
It's everything, period, because you cannot improve what you cannot measure. Shari mentioned it well about all these inputs of 1% losses or things that are happening that the farmer doesn't know about that. And the same happened in the meat processing plant, inside of the meat processing plant. is such a complex industry where there are a lot of small losses that at the end of the day add hundreds of thousands of dollars, that if you're able to trace and track all of those measurements and improve them, ideally, it's significant there. The digital tracing there to change it.
I assume. Yeah, sorry. Finish your thought.
No, it's all about that too.
Yeah.
It's all about.
Yeah, is that the same in dairy and beef production, Shari, in terms of the data collection and its analysis later on, things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is being able to quantify those things. And I think sometimes it makes more sense when we look at, let's say, Olympic athletes and how they're able to shave off that 2% and get ahead. And in some of these competitive industries, you have to almost think like an athlete. How do I shave off that 2%? What's going on if you're a cyclist? What's going on with my bike? What's going on with the friction here? What's going on? And I mean, when it comes to those kind of concepts, you find that the groups that do that tend to get ahead. And when you follow which track they went, they often looked at those things. Like, what does it actually mean? And how does that actually impact? So I definitely say that's the case. What I would add is that we're looking more and more, and this will tie into sort of the AI concept, we're looking more and more how we can take that burden of data collection off of the producers, because there's lots of options today to collect data without that having to be a manual process. And that's the exciting part, because nobody necessarily likes doing the groundwork to get those great answers.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. Did you want to close off, Yurii, the conversation? We're going to move on in a second here, but is there any final thought you have on challenges and opportunities?
For sure, I just want to comment on something Dr. Shari said, that data collection is super important, and it's one of the biggest part of making some analytical decision. But transforming this data into useful insights, that's what comes next, and that's where artificial intelligence and machine learning can help us and can help livestock farmers. So I think we kind of bring ourselves to a second part of our discussion today.
Okay. We did get a comment from a audience member named Innocent, and I think his background is in the textile industry. He makes the comment, the most effective solution seems to be those that operate in a hands-off way, enabling farmers or users to stay focused on what they do best while still gaining the benefits of the activity they're engaged in. I'm just paraphrasing slightly there. So thanks for that comment, Innocent. And I think we kind of covered that in a way, but it's nice to see that that's a reflection from a different industry, although a lot of textiles do come from animal products like wool. All right, so let's go on to our next section. We're going to talk a little bit about specifically artificial intelligence as it relates to the livestock and meat processing industries. I think it's clear, and you just can't read a newspaper or listen to television or other media these days and not hear an awful lot of discussion about artificial intelligence. It's clear that agriculture is going to be no different than, I think, the rest of human activity, that artificial intelligence is going to be a critical part of digital agriculture in the future. So, but I did want to ask, when it comes to livestock, how will artificial intelligence have the greatest impact in the animal sector of agriculture? And let's start with that, and then we'll come back to another question. Sebastian, do you want to lead off?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, artificial intelligence is too broad, and we see it like it's a buzzword today, but I'm going to specified on these grading technologies, what this AI grading technology involves, using artificial intelligence and machine learning, because it's not only artificial intelligence, and you also have other terms like deep learning, and it's all about this algorithm that to analyze the meat quality in the processing stage, where a human eye cannot compete with an algorithm. And all of these systems, we have specific images, detailed images, of the meat cuts. There we can assess meat marbling, IMF, which is intramuscular fat, eye muscle area, the color of the meat, color of the fat ratio, and this helps the processing plants to be more accurate and efficient. And I'm going to insist on these two words because the traditional methods, they relied on the human judgment and error, on the human eye. And it can vary. An employee can be sick, absent, whatever, and then they cannot judge, well, at the end of the day, they are more tired about this repetitive task. And besides, even if you have the most expert guide grading meat, you won't have their human photo, a human eye photo, whatever it remains in their head, And with all of this AI, you have a backup and documentation, which can be later used in all of this blockchain and transparency to the end consumer. Let's say scanning a QR code, and then you can go back. But without all that documentation, and this is where artificial intelligence is helping to gather all of those small data points and data inputs and connecting all those dots.
Yeah, well, and grading is an important part of many different kinds of agricultural activities, including grains and oilseeds, vegetables, fruits. They all have different grading components. So it has a lot of application beyond just animal agriculture. Shari, what's your thought on where AI will have the biggest positive impact for animal industries?
Yeah, I see it as a very positive impact because I think I have seen some stats tied to job losses connected with artificial intelligence, but that's not my experience. I think for a lot of whether it's dairy farms or feedlots or cow-calf, they either really rely on family members, staff who have been really amazing staff for a long period of time, or sometimes they just don't have the staff to fill the positions. And so when it comes down to that, the jobs that could be done better are just somewhat getting overlooked. I mean, when we talk about the usage of computer vision in places like dairies or feedlots, the ability to be able to get accurate measures of everything from cows that have calved to mobility scores to, we often don't have individuals who are doing this today on some farms. And so you're missing that data and you're missing that profits. So it's not like that comes in and replaces jobs necessarily. That's just a benefit. That's just an extra benefit that could be additional revenue for those farms. So when it comes down to it, it often takes away the jobs that are the least fun to do, the least tied into often why farmers went into this in the first place as a lifestyle career sometimes. And some of those things that potentially might be difficult to train somebody to do in a really accurate way. So it just really nicely dovetails into the current skill set on most farms.
Yeah, I'm sort of thinking too that when you're trying to make important decisions, I think you referenced this earlier, where you have decisions and they're fundamental to your operation. Mm-hmm. It's hard to make that decision without the proper analytics and everything, and that just provides, I think, peace of mind for people. At least they're making decisions with the full knowledge that's available.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about it as being a bit more like augmented intelligence versus artificial intelligence, because we're giving all the information to the producer and then allowing them to make that decision. So they have much more of a rich, they have much more rich data to be able to make a really great decision tied to their operation and what it's going to look like in the future. And that's stuff that, the average dairy farmer doesn't necessarily want to get into complex data modeling. That's not what they want to do necessarily. And this allows them to have that tools and almost like a super team at their fingertips without necessarily having to pay the salaries of all those people they would need. So if anything, it just gives them more tools in their tool belt.
I guess it allows them to ask questions like, what if I did this, or what if I did that, without actually having to take a chance and implement it without knowing how it actually may turn out.
Yep.
Yurii, how complex is it to develop the software that supports these kind of AI solutions? And I don't know whether there's specific challenges related to AI in livestock, or if it's just generally the same in across agriculture.
Well, it really depends on what type of AI solution are we talking about. If you're talking about computer vision solutions, whether it's for a meat grading, disease detection, object detection, or, for example, animal detection, most of that can be and is already done. You just need proper data sets in order to train an algorithm. There are existing algorithms right now, open source, you can integrate into your solution and utilize them. But the devil's in details, and the matter of what data to use or what data sets to use in order to train the model, that's what is most important. Because you can Google it out. There is a solution, it's an open source solution called YOLO. It's short for You Look Only Once. And basically that's a pre-trained model that you can customize for your specific needs, whether it's object detection or boundaries detection, or in some cases disease detection. But that's just one small piece of AI. We have a very different direction called LLMs, large language models. Basically, it's like a neural network that can be trained and educated on the data you provide. So, and that's, I guess, ties up to the example you mentioned, where you can basically write down one prompt or one question. You're wondering about your farm. What should I do to bring up my milk production by 10%? And for example, if those LLMs would exist and they would be tailored to a need of dairy farmers, it would give you a very precise instruction on what to do. It takes time, and I guess nowadays AI kind of technology becoming not just a fancy or trendy word. It's already have found actual use cases across the industries, and livestock is not an exception. That is something we've discussed: computer vision, LLMs, and deep learning models to train on livestock farms data. And just to summarize, I think that's the future, and I think the most benefit from this is going to be for farmers themselves, but also further down the supply chain, people who sell inputs, for companies who sell feed, who sell equipment, etc.
So we're just about to wrap up this segment. But I would ask just a final question for Sebastian and Shari. I mean, obviously, there's immense excitement and promise about artificial intelligence. I mean, are there some practical limitations that we need to be aware of as we consider these technologies, or is it the sky's the limit?
There's absolutely limitations. I mean, when we think of where we were before you had search engines, that information was there. It was just hard to get to. And so when you have a search engine, you might have, 100 results come up, and maybe the first 10 actually aren't applicable to you, right? You look through it and you can get to your data source, but you need to filter it yourself. You need to make sure that the questions you are asking are the right questions, that they're phrased the right way, that there's not a misunderstanding between that. And I think thinking of that example is very similar to thinking through AI. If you put something into an AI model that can misunderstand what you're looking for, you can get a very different answer back. And so that's why it's really important to make sure that the expertise are dovetailing into the AI that's being produced, because you can get the same situation. On top of that, there are limitations to what comes out, whether it's the data the lack of data to give you the answers that you're looking for, or the lack of an actual expert opinion, or the lack of training. All of these things can really limit what you're doing. So, I mean, not all AI is created equally, but I think it needs to be tied to the right problem at this point in time. And that'll change, and there will be better, more opportunities as we go forward. But it should be the right problem. It should be tied to the right data set. You should look into whether or not it's been validated in your country, because potentially it's been validated in a country with a very different farming situation than yours. So ask those questions about that. And then look at the results as far as what the time savings are, what the economic savings are tied to the cost of it, and then you'll be able to assess it. I would add, though, sometimes you want to embrace technologies where it's a bit of a you're not getting a massive economic benefit, but you're sort of future-proofing yourself by testing these out, by gathering that data, by being able to assess how you want to use these things. So I would say staying ahead of the curve is a smart thing to do.
Right. So we have to understand the limitations, but at the same time, we have to be aware of everything that's going on and be alert. Sebastian, do you have some final thought on that issue of limitations?
Great comments from Shari, Dr. Shari. And not that much to add, but let's say on the processing side, I would say that the main limitation, it would be the human being, no, and the human minds. Like they are the ones, and the human are the ones already. When you implement a change, they are the first one to oppose to that, because we have always been doing it like this. Why and how a smartphone can help me to grade meat? It is too good to be true, but yeah, it is like that. So that has been one of the biggest barriers that we have. And once we show them the economics and how much money they will save in cutting costs and also adding value to what they are currently selling, they are more open-minded to see and embrace all these AI information technology adoption. But
yeah. All right. Well, thanks. Well, that was a great discussion on artificial intelligence, and I'm really interested in the topic, so I really appreciated all your insights. So we're just going to move now to a final and shorter section, and we just wanted to talk a bit about the pace of innovation. And some days when you are following these issues, you feel like it's a sprint and not a marathon. It's hard to keep track of everything that's going on. But in terms of adoption of digital solutions in the animal sector of agriculture, what's your thoughts on the acceleration that's going on? Is it sustainable, and or is it more of a slow process than we think? And will it take more time for some of these solutions to really take hold? I mean, how quickly can we adopt some of these new technologies? Shari?
Yeah, I think we can adopt them incredibly quickly. I do think that if you're in a farming situation, you do have to be cautious when it comes to adoption, because, especially if you're a crop farmer, for instance, if something goes wrong with that crop, that's a big deal. And so we need more centers of innovation that will allow that testing out of different technologies and different options to take that weight off the producers. So there's a definite need for that. But I think when it comes to the farming community, when a technology has been needed, like Starlink or something like that, they've been incredibly fast to actually adopt those things. So speed where it makes sense, caution also, more groups to test these out. But I just think when it comes to an individual, having a mental map of what's going on with AI, a concept of what machine learning is, those natural language processings like the LLMs, computer vision, robotics, expert systems, if you have those 5 groupings in your head about AI, and then you can start to create a mental map of the technologies that come up, then I think it's easier for you to start to place that together and make assessments. How does that fit in? Is this useful for, if you're a consultant, the farms I work with, how do I talk about this topic? And I think that discussion will then help, whether it's yourself or companies you work with, be able to know what do I want to try out and what I don't.
Yeah. And we did have a really good session a few months back on smart farms and the role that they can play in testing and adoption of digital solutions. Sebastian, did you want to take a crack at this?
Yeah, just to add final thoughts on that. I grew up spending every vacation on the family farm, and I don't see if today my dad would be working on that farm, collecting all that data using the smartphone. No, it is unthinkable. But that trend is accompanied by the new generations, that they are more techy. And on that, at the farm level, I see that, we are seeing already a faster adoption on that movement. But it still requires some time because it has been a lot of farmers which we have been in contact with, because we are integrating all of the work that Dr. Shari is doing, connecting the farm with the feedlot with the slaughterhouse, and to have like one-stop shop solution, data integration. And at the processing plant, in the slaughterhouse, we see as well a faster adoption because they are used to hardware and machines and metals and all those big. So imagine and seeing like a software where how we are working and sending them an onboarding document and be live up and running in one day. It is, again, not too good to be true, but we see the adoption that is, once they see the results, they embrace right away.
Well, I have spent a lot of my career encouraging greater adoption of more sophisticated systems in fertilizer use on farms, for example. I think that there's a lot of discussion about the age of farmers now and how that's a roadblock to adoption of new technology, new ideas. But I also think it's true that most farms are intergenerational, that it's not just a 60-year-old farmer running things. He's got children that are probably engaged in the operation, or staff that are much younger. And so I think there's a lot more openness to innovation on farms. And obviously in the processing industry, these are very sophisticated companies, and their ability to adopt change is pretty significant. So that was a great discussion, short, but I think very much to the point. So I think we're going to kind of wrap up. We like to close in about 2 minutes. So we're trying to innovate a little bit ourselves here at Digital Ag Global, and we're going to ask everybody to go around and give us what you think is your hot take in terms of digital agriculture right now. And maybe we could start with Yurii.
Sure. My hot take for today and for digital solutions for livestock industry would be to look out for digital twin technology. Basically, the technology that helps you to create a digital twin of your asset. In case of a livestock, it can be a farm or a group of animals or individual animal, and you can utilize a digital twin to create sort of experiment, make a specific change in feed or nutrition, or make sure you apply a different vaccine and see the alternative result of that. So those technologies, like digital twin technology, can elevate and can help livestock farmers to see what the changes can be and how they can affect their operations. Okay,
Sebastian, how about you?
I would summarize it in the hot take, a solution where integrates all the data as Shari is collecting now, with the data that we are generating as well and collecting. So to have all that verified and transparency, ensuring a traceability from farm to fork, and sooner than later to the end consumer, the supermarket shelf there. No? We're just scanning a QR code and getting all the data back to the farm and where does it come from and all that. This is
so throughout the whole supply chain you're talking about. Yeah, that is hot. And Shari, what about you?
Yeah, I love Yuri's comment, because our dairy farm management system is completely founded on a digital twin concept. So I would definitely agree. The things that we're doing tied to vaccinations or comparing of two treatments is completely tied to that. I would say though, some of these data collection techniques, aggregations, especially for the processors, have been nice to haves. It's like they can operate without them, but they would rather have them with them because they see the profit. And everybody outside, if you look closely, you see the profit when people use these technologies. However, it's going from a nice to have to an absolute necessity with some of the legislation that's coming on, with some of the really hot competition that's coming in here. It's going to be a survival thing. So it's going to go from being a nice to have to being the thing that's going to differentiate you, either surviving based on the requirements coming down, or surviving as far as profitability. And so I think that's really going to shift over the next while.
So I think what you're saying is that everyone needs to keep attending Digital Ag Global sessions to stay on top of all these issues to be relevant and competitive in the future. I think that's what you said. So thanks very much, Yurii, Sebastian, and Shari, for your all your insights. I really enjoyed this session today. I want to encourage the audience. We didn't get a lot of comments or questions. Feel free to send in your thoughts after the session, and we'll try and address them. And we are also very much interested in your views on what topics and issues we should be taking on in the future. So I think that's, we're about 2 minutes over, but that's okay. So thanks again to everybody. Thanks to the audience, and Olia, who's at the command center for Digital Ag Global. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.